Hello and welcome to our panel discussion, which is called Unplug. So today we'll discuss the topic of identity and gender performed through linguistic styles. So today in this podcast we will talk about how the linguistic style shapes the way we perform identity, gender, and also how this performance can connect to it can be power, prestige, and also like the social attitudes. Our discussion is inspired by the themes from Jones and Themistocles in their book, which is called Introducing Language and Society. In this book, they talk about style, identity, and attitudes, and also the linguistic appropriation in everyday interaction. And also for today, we want to connect these ideas to our own experiences and the linguistic practice we encounter it can be in our daily lives, especially in the classroom and also right now during these times on social media. My name is Carolina. I will be the moderator for today, and my team is made up by Karime Arvizu, Marisol Arenas, and Avril Lozano. We will start with Avril, who will talk about how linguistic styles function as a performance of identity.
Thank you, Carol. Before we start, Jones and Themistocles remind us that style is not only how we talk, but a social resource for constructing identities. Identity is not fixed. We perform it every time we interact, which is why concepts like style shifting, audience design, and speaker design matter for understanding how people adapt to different contexts. As future teachers, we see this clearly in teenagers who experiment with ways of speaking and presenting themselves, especially in gendered performances influenced by trends. One example is the I'm just a girl trend, which seemed silly at first but ended up reinforcing stereotypes that represent women as clumsy or incapable, and infantilized them using girl instead of woman. Another example is the clinger aesthetic. This style promotes a soft, minimalist, and always put together a feminine image. In response to these trends, other creators began performing a chaotic or messy personality online. At the end of the day, both extremes reinforce gender expectations. Either women must be perfect or they must be a disaster. Overall, style is part of a larger performance amplified by social media, where people often exaggerate identities to fit a trend, turning styles into rehearsed performances shaped by online pressure.
Hi, I'm Karime. So, picking up from what Avril said, I want to connect this to how linguistic style also reflects and reinforces ideas about gender, prestige, and power. The way people speak is often seen as more or less legitimate depending on the social groups associated with that specific style. So, we have, for example, researchers cited by Jones and Themistocles, for example, Lakoff, who described what are considered stereotypically feminine styles, such as the use of intensifiers, tag questions, and a high level of explicit, for example, politeness. But these features are not biological, they come from social expectations. So, for example, in our own teaching experience, we have noticed some clear patterns. So, for example, we have seen female students, especially children and teenagers, they tend to speak in softer and higher pitch voices when they participate in class, and they often sound more careful or polite or agreeable, and sometimes like even apologetic. In contrast, we have seen that male students usually sound more relaxed, more confident, and less controlled. And sometimes they speak to a teacher with the same tone they will use, for example, with a sister or an aunt or even a friend. And this shows that gender performance is happening in the classroom and that it appears in everyday interactions, not just like, for example, in online spaces. So we can say that prestige also plays an important role because styles often labeled as masculine are interpreted as firm or confident, while the feminine styles tend to be seen as emotional or sentient, or like, for example, even childish. And these interpretations affect how people are treated and evaluated. So we can say that even though these are stereotypes, they have real effects because linguistic style is not only about communication, it also helps shape power relations inside the classroom and beyond.
Thank you, Karime. My name is Marisol Arenas, and now I would like to focus on how interactions on the internet intensifies identity performances and encourages the linguistic borrowing to the point that it becomes appropriation, which is also a key topic that is addressed by Johnson Themistocles in their book. And on social media, we experience what Johnson Themistocles called the context collapse, meaning that we speak to multiple audiences and all at once. Because of this, users online tend to modify their style to fit what is most like visible, popular, or rewarded by other people. A clear example today is like the widespread use and appropriation of AAVE by people from outside the African American community. And for example, we have seen this phenomena occur among Latin American Spanish speaking spaces in social media like X, TikTok, and Instagram, where expressions like the ones I'm going to mention shortly are taken and literally translated into another language, which in this case is Spanish, and then used as if they were trendy internet slang that just came out of nowhere. For example, expressions like "you ate that up" we have seen being used in Spanish as "devoraste." "You served" we have seen it being used as "serviste," and its given is often said like "está dando," which is and these translated expressions are don't always make much sense grammatically wise for us. These expressions lose their cultural meaning and the cultural meaning that they originally carried in Black and queer Black communities in the United States because when translated literally, the Spanish versions become internet slang and jokes that are detached from their grammar, history, and the actual social significance of what it means to speak this dialect. And Johnson Themistocles explained that this process is shaped by language attitudes. For example, when marginalized speakers use these features, they may be stereotyped or mocked, which is a problem that we have seen later leads to members of this community to code switch in specific situations. But when influencers from outside the community uses them mindlessly, these very same features can become trendy and even used among prestigious spaces. And this contrast reveals to us the unequal power dynamics about who is actually allowed to sound a certain way and who isn't. And what we come to see online on these spaces is a mixture of admiration, imitation, and sometimes even unintentional erasure, which is it's complicated, but it shows how style, identity, and power are always interacting, even in something that seems as simple and as a viral phrase online.
Thank you, Marisol. So now to close this podcast, I kind of want to mention about authenticity and who has the right to use certain styles and who doesn't. And we have Jones and Themistocles who explain that authenticity is socially negotiated and assigned and is not possessed. And I think this is kind of like true in every situation. The exact same way of speaking can be prized maybe in one person, but if we see it differently, it can be criticized in another, depending, I don't know, maybe on their gender or their class or also their identity. And as a students and future teachers, we constantly see how people change, like the way they behave through language. For example, some students tend to use like American TikTok slang even when it doesn't match their linguistic backgrounds. Others also overpronounce English words to show that they like know English or to kind of like show up a certain type of status. Something that those who are listeners might interpret as like a fresa attitude here. Also, many students tend to imitate online trends without actually understanding where those expressions either come from or what do they meant. Something that we see so frequently is the gender double standards. Maybe a boy who speaks confidently is seen as assertive, but while if a girl who speaks the same way as the boy can be seen as aggressive. And to kind of finish off this podcast, I will mention this question just to close up, which these are three questions. The first one is, why are some styles celebrated while others are ridiculed? Then number two, who decided which identities are acceptable? And last one, how do these norms reinforce inequalities related to gender, class, and community? So that will be all. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. We hope our discussion helped you to think more about how we perform identity through language. Thank you and bye.